What's going on, you guys? We're about to go live with Keto San Antonio, and we were trying to do this over on Facebook, and unfortunately, Facebook was not cooperating. We love technology, but sometimes technology can be a you-know-what, and so because of that, we're going live here on Instagram, so you guys didn't know you were going to get this special little biohacking your keto diet episode here today. So I am waiting on Keto San Antonio to come on in to the fray. I see a couple of the members of that group are here. San Ketonio Prego is here. I see Keto Teacher Mom is here. So when we go live, she being Anna just got here. I will add her to the conversation, and we will make sure that we get her into the fray. So now, Anna, if you will request to be a part of the conversation, I can add you, and there you are. So we're going to add you to this. Me. So yes, we went live on my channel, but this is Anna's show. What up, Anna?
Hey, you are just a doll to be so patient with me.
Hey,
Technical difficulties today.
No worries. We're gonna get her done. You get the Jenny Rant studio. That's where we are
Yay!
today.
Absolutely fabulous. Yay.
Awesome.
Well, welcome to Keto San Antonio. You are one of our favorite mentors.
One of these days, we're going to get down to San Antonio.
Absolutely. Working on it.
Yep.
And all of you guys that are joining from Keto San Antonio, I want to welcome you. And Keto San Antonio. So, and we are super thrilled to have you, Jimmy, with us. I had mentioned to Jimmy that we're getting ready to do a kind of our an N1, but in a community type experiment. And Jimmy is, of course, the pro at that. You're one of the ones that kind of originated that whole thought of testing ourselves. So I wanted to get some information from you to share with our folks.
I'd be delighted. I've been doing this. I want to say my first ever N=1 experiment was 2007. I wanted to know what those Atkins shakes were doing to my blood sugar. So I tested it, and I was like, okay, if we're going to do this sciencey, we need to have some controls. So I did whole milk, 2% milk, skim milk, and raw milk, because I live in South Carolina. It's legal here. So I had all of those, and I was testing my blood sugar like after drinking these along with the Atkins. The Atkins did bad. It raised my blood sugar. It was horrible. But the skim milk was the very worst. Skim milk boosted my blood sugar like 80 points in an hour. That ain't good. The best response was the raw milk. I had like 5 points in 1 hour, which was a fabulous response.
That's great. So when you were doing your testing, of course, you measured your blood glucose and blood ketones before you tested, and then did you wait 30 minutes, an hour? How long did you wait for your first test?
So, Anna, what are you referring to? Are you referring to when I did nutritional ketosis, that experiment, or what?
When you were testing your reactions, say, for instance, to the Atkins drinks?
Well, there was no such thing at that time as blood ketones. So I was not testing blood ketones. I was only testing blood sugar. And keep in mind, I was only like 2 years removed from kind of starting this whole shebang. 1 year as a podcaster, seems like a million years ago now. But so I was a very rudimentary knowledge. And maybe there's people here that have never even tested their blood sugar before. So what did I do was I heard that 1 hour postprandial, which means after eating, is going to typically be your highest reading. So I tested at what's called baseline. So before you have whatever it is you're testing, you want to get a baseline reading, okay? So then 1 hour postprandial, after eating, after drinking, whatever you're testing, you want to test that number. That number should not, or it should be the highest number that you'll have in the entire experiment. And then by 2 hours, that's the third point. So baseline, 1 hour, 2 hour. By 2 hours, you should be back close to baseline again if that thing isn't causing you a negative response. So for me, when I did the skim milk, for example, baseline was like 95. 1 hour postprandial was something like 175, but by 2 hours, it was still like 140 something, which told me that's no bueno. That's not a great response. You're looking to get back to within about a 5-ish point range of your baseline by 2 hours. If you don't, whatever it is you ate was not a good food or drink for you to have.
Very good information. So let me ask you too, if we are testing a food and there is a pretty marked increase in our blood glucose,
yeah,
and our let's say maybe 50 to 70 points or something really
yeah,
really high, if our blood glucose comes back down after the 2 hours, can we assume that maybe that's okay?
Oh, I hate people. I hate people that have that reaction. Oh yeah, my blood sugar went up, but it was back to normal within 2 hours. I'm like,
exactly. Okay.
Because that's almost impossible for someone with insulin resistance, for example. I think both matter. To answer your question specifically, I think the 1 hour postprandial reading should not go up 25 to 30 points or higher. If it gets much higher than 30 points, then I would be concerned. Why is your blood sugar, why is insulin not responding appropriately to keep that tightly managed? And we know why. It means that food is responding in your body. And so, yes, in your example, if it went up 75, 80 points and it came back down to baseline, what I would want to know is what's making the insulin not respond appropriately, because insulin's role as the hormone in the body, along with glucagon, is to keep your blood sugar in a tight, healthy range, which, let's define that. Healthy is 60 to 100 is the tight range of blood sugar you should try to fall within. And so most people that eat keto typically fall within that 60 to 100 range. And so if you get up to 145 from, say, 85, that's a huge response. And what I would want to know is, what is it that you ate that would cause that big of a reaction? If you're not handling that food properly, you need to know that. And that 1 hour postprandial shows you that.
Great. Now, something else that I'm expecting is going to also pop up for us in this experiment is, because I've had some conversations with folks about this, is if we were to test something, say, for instance, maybe an artificial sweetener such as sucralose, and somebody's blood glucose maybe actually went down.
Yep, I can explain that.
Do that for us.
Oh, you're ready for me to explain that? Okay.
Yes.
And by the way, I have done these tests with artificial sweeteners, drinking diet soda to see if those have any kind of impact. And the challenge with artificial sweeteners in general, before I get to why blood sugar went down, the problem with artificial sweeteners in general is the bulking agent that they tend to use in it. So if you use little packets of, say, Splenda, for example, that Splenda isn't just the sucralose, the sweetener that's in it. It also has this thing called maltodextrin. So it's always been funny to me since I learned about this, Anna, that in a sugar alternative, what do they use as a bulking agent? Sugar.
Exactly.
So maltodextrin is just another form of sugar. And so that's why there's 1 gram of carbohydrate in a packet of Splenda, for example. So that would be a reason why some people might get a response on their blood sugar meter. But let's get to your question, because it's a great one, and it's one worth talking about. Because I saw somebody posted this question on Facebook. Oh, well, my blood sugar goes down after I eat. Is that good? What's going on? And no, it is not good. Because what's happening is the baseline reading could be like 85 blood sugar. But then 1 hour postprandial, rather than going way, way, way up, what happened? It went way, way, way down to like 70. So what's going on there is what's called reactive hypoglycemia. So when you eat food, and it could be any food that would do this, but you eat food, your blood sugar normally would go up, and your insulin would try to push that blood sugar down. And that's happening in this case. But what's not happening is the bottom end. So insulin's role is to push blood sugar down. Glucagon, and I want this word to resonate. I want people to know about glucagon just as much as insulin, because while insulin is what you're trying to control, you also want that glucagon response, whose role is to raise blood sugar. Again, is trying to keep your body within this tight range of healthy blood sugar. If glucagon is resistant and your response and glucagon is not acting appropriately, then insulin can overpower that and push blood sugar way down. You start getting fatigued. You start getting hungry, even though you just ate. You start having shakes. You feel like you're getting sick. And what that is a reactive hypoglycemia. And for people that have been addicted to sugar and carbohydrates, I dealt with this when I was trying to get, after I went low carb and lost the weight and everything, I was trying to kind of get everything dialed in my diet. I noticed that I would have these reactive hypoglycemic episodes. And it wasn't until I went full on keto that that kind of healed itself. And I don't have that anymore. So long as my fat stays high, my protein is moderate, and my carbs are low. And again, that's going to vary from person to person. And finding that right fit for you is going to prevent these things from happening. So in general, lower blood sugar after eating is no bueno, not a good thing. You want to have at least a little bit of a rise in the blood sugar, but then not to the point that you're getting symptomatic of hypoglycemia.
Great. I am anticipating this coming up, so I wanted to make sure that our folks had some good Jimmy information on that. Something else that I loved your Jimmy rants this morning about the Cadbury eggs and the sugar and such. And yes. And one of the things that came to my mind too, I recently got some medication that has sugar in it. And I guess this isn't a question, but I just am so perplexed as to why medications are coming to us with sugar in them as well. And do you think that that's something that, like for myself, that I could test, or would any reactions that I'm getting also be towards the medication?
Well, it's convoluted, that's for sure, because you will definitely get a response from the sugar that they put in it. Why would they put sugar? Is it a chewable medication? Is it a pill?
It's sublingual.
Okay, so yes, it is a
lozenge.
chewable. Okay, so what that is they're trying to get you to digest it. And so they add the sugar to it to make it a little bit palatable. And so you put it underneath the tongue. That's what sublingual means for those of you that don't know. So you stick this under the tongue, and it's supposed to get into your bloodstream really fast. Well, what it's also doing is putting that sugar in your bloodstream really fast. So when you do your tests, Anna, you will actually be testing the sugar, but you will also be testing somewhat the effects that medication is doing on your body. So it'd be worth seeing, so that you can say, whoa, I had no idea it was doing that to my body. But you bring up a good point. I definitely want to underscore this. If you're doing testing and you're taking medications, keep in mind a lot of medications mess with this pathway that controls your blood sugar as well. So it may shut down some insulin production. It may boost insulin production, and that's going to have an impact on your blood sugar. So if you're doing these tests, obviously you want to take the medications your doctor has promoted to you. But the best is if you didn't do any of the medications while you're doing the testing.
Very good information. Great. Do we have any questions from our viewers? I mean, I'm giving some questions, but
shot your wad with all the questions. Just kidding.
No, but can you give us any other pointers on maybe choices that we can make towards our foods in relation to the information that we learned from the testing?
Yes.
You've mentioned You mentioned
Yes.
if our blood glucose goes too high,
Right.
maybe eliminating those
Right.
items from our diet.
Right. So here's something, some people are like, well, sweet potatoes are a real whole food, Jimmy. Can I not just add in a sweet potato? And I always go, okay, do this experiment. Test your blood sugar at baseline. Let's say it's 90. And then have that sweet potato. And then at 1 hour postprandial, it's like 147. And 2 hour postprandial, it's back down to 120, but not back to baseline. So with that information, you go, okay, maybe I don't need to eat sweet potatoes at all. Or if you want to try a lower dose. So maybe next time you cut the sweet potato right down the middle and you do the same experiment and you start at 90. And at 1 hour postprandial, it goes to 131. And then at 2 hours postprandial, it comes back to 101, 98, something like that. And you're like, okay, not quite back to baseline yet, but okay, I'm good with that. And maybe you make that kind of a choice. For me, if you don't get all the way back down to baseline again, whatever it was, even if it's a so-called keto food, you need to eliminate that. I think that's just the prudent thing to do. And I don't think enough people give credence, Anna, to what higher blood sugar means. You're basically flooding your body with sugar when you allow your blood sugar to get that high and stay high. And that has glycating effects. So that just means you're sugarifying. You're kind of getting stickiness going on inside of your blood. And the lower you can keep that glucose in your blood, the healthier your body can run. Think about it in your car. If you allow the oil to become sludgy, and after a while that sludginess starts clogging up little I don't know anything about a car, but I'm just making up an analogy here.
Right.
The pistons, they can't they can't work properly. It gums everything up. Well, that's exactly what you're doing when you allow the body to get all of this blood sugar in there and not clear it out appropriately. It's why a ketogenic diet works so well. It's why people's health gets dramatically better when they go keto, because it naturally lowers your blood sugar, and not only lowers your blood sugar, gets it in a healthy range that's even healthier and lower than what conventional medicine says is healthy. So conventional medicine says, oh, just get it under 100, but don't go too far below like 85, 80, because you'll be sick. And for a keto dieter, and especially one that implements periods of intermittent fasting and extended fasting and things like that, you can get your blood sugar down to 70s extremely easy, maybe even 60s and 50s, and you're completely fine. And for someone like that, you're far healthier than most of the sugar burning population.
Absolutely. And you mentioning this brings to mind one of the debates that we keep having in Keto San Antonio, which, we're in Texas. And so we have this ongoing tortilla debate. And as you know, there are several low carb tortillas that are on the market. And we're talking about maybe testing those as well. I don't know what to expect. I don't know if we're going to,
I know what to expect.
Well,
If
I
you're
don't know
talking
if we're
about the
going to
ones
be
from
getting
Mission,
higher blood glucose or not. I'm kind of expecting we may,
yeah.
But if we don't, one of the things that I keep telling folks is you still have to be mindful of the ingredients, because a lot of these
Yes.
low carb tortillas that are coming out, they have wheat gluten, oats, a lot of bad stuff. So can you share some pearls on that?
Oh my gosh, when those it was so long ago, there's so many of them, but they'll brag about it being like X amount of net carbs.
Yes.
And I am a total carber. If you want to be intellectually honest about where you stand on your carb tolerance, don't fall for the net carb marketing scheme, because that's literally all it is. You gotta count total carbs. And if you look at the total carbohydrates on even one of those tortillas, you're in the double digits. You're getting up there in the upper teens, low 20s of double digits in carbs. That's already way too many. Oh, but it's got X number of net carbs. Okay, test your blood sugar. So yeah, I would love for that test to be done. Keep in mind the reactive hypoglycemia thing I mentioned earlier. When you do this test, Are you going to eat them just straight up, just straight the tortillas? Are you going to add in some kind of meat and cheese to it? I mean, how do you not put cheese on a tortilla to make like a quesadilla? And keep in mind that that will blunt a little bit of the effects of the glucose response. So I recommend the protocol for testing this is 2 different ways. Number 1, isolate just the tortilla so that you eat it. I know it's gross, you know, eat a tortilla by itself.
Well, not terribly.
That way, huh?
Not terribly gross, but I mean, we're tortilla people down here.
I'm going to have a tortilla and put my body through testing. So I want to put some cheese on that bad boy and maybe some meat and sour cream and all doctor it up. So that was the other one I was going to say. Doctor it up like you would use it in normal life and do that test. Now, obviously, you're going to have all these other confounding variables, but the isolation of just the tortilla and then compare and contrast. Okay, when I add in the meat, the cheese, the sour cream, and all the thing, and keep a documentation of what you put on there, and test your blood sugar at baseline 1 hour, 2 hour, and then do the same thing with just the tortilla baseline 1 hour, 2 hour, and see that comparison. That would be really interesting data to see from your group.
We've got that on the list, so I'm kind of excited to see that. I have so many every day. It's one of those things that hits the group is a question about the low carb tortillas. And we're going to actually test 3. We're going to 3 different kinds.
Okay.
So we'll that's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Then the other thing that we talk about or that people ask about in the group are, and I know I can anticipate your answer on this, but those darn premier protein shakes that have just a slew of ingredients on them, but again, are technically low carb. Not sure if that's one we should test or not, but I am kind of curious about it.
That also is predicated on the net carb hypothesis. If you look at the actual number of carbs and, like you said, the chemical crap storm of ingredients that they put in this kind of thing, that's your clue, you guys. If you see something that's supposedly keto, and a lot of companies are slapping keto, when Slim Fast threw keto on a line of products, I knew we had jumped the shark with the keto kind of food trend. But when you see like a line of ingredients that's just a mile long, that is your clue to avoid like the plague. Any good quality food is going to be one ingredient, ideally, maybe a couple, beef salt for like a steak or something, or like 5 or less ingredients, or like those F-bombs that have macadamia nut butter and salt. That's literally all they are. And so,
I love those.
yes, they're amazing, especially when you travel, and we're about to travel internationally, so I'll be getting some of those real soon. But I think where we get into trouble is we like to look at labels, and it's labeled a keto, this is a keto wrap, the tortilla, and people, they buy into the marketing. And it's something I try to harp again and again in my work. I've done this for 15 years, and I've seen all these food trends come and go. And I can tell you with verifiable fact, these companies don't give a crap about your health. And so if they don't care about your health and they only care about making a buck off of you, of course they're going to lie about what's in their food to try to get you to buy it. Let's go keto friendly right there on the front packaging and get these dummies to buy this stuff. And I'm saying stop falling for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the things I'm really trying to lead our community towards being aware of, is that the more and more that keto is in the forefront of the news, the more we're going to have things labeled as keto, but they're not necessarily going to be good for us, and even keto. One of the new things that is out at our local grocery store here in Texas is a protein bread, or something they're touting as a protein bread that has all the bad stuff.
So Anna, Keto Couple had a great comment I wanted to give feedback on. Keto Couple 333, who's a part of your group there in Keto San Antonio. Woo, woo.
Yes, I see his question.
What's that?
I see his question,
Yeah,
yes.
don't forget that some people are just starting and that some products help bridge the gap from the SAD to keto. That's how I got started and progressed. So remember, it can be a process. So thank you for that comment, by the way. Keep in
Very
mind
good
what we're
comment.
talking about here are people that are seasoned keto people, because if you're even talking about biohacking in the slightest and testing your blood sugar in the slightest, you're already advanced beyond that newbie keto. So keep in mind, we're not talking to the newbie keto here person. When I switched over from 16 cans of Coca-Cola a day, Anna, I started drinking diet soda. And I had
Right.
eight cans of diet soda instead of the 16 cans. So I get the transitionary period, but we're talking apples and oranges here, and we don't need either one of those anymore. We don't need to necessarily look at what I'm saying here today is for the newbies. I think newbies need to kind of get off the crap and get keto adapted and get adjusted to this way of eating. Then when the time comes that they want to start biohacking and tightening things up, then what we're talking about here is applicable to them. But thank you for your comment.
That was really good. One of the things we do talk about in Keto San Antonio is to try to help bring along our newbies and folks that are maybe have kids, is we do try to talk about things in a good, better, best. Yeah, I did have those questions about ingredients. Are there any other questions? Earlier when I asked that, I couldn't see the questions, but you guys are great. And Jordan just said it all comes down to whether or not you're really ready or not, which is a good point.
And that's the bottom line. If you're not ready to really kind of get serious about this and you're kind of dibble-dabbling, dipping your toe into keto, okay, great. But what we're imploring people to do is, okay, you dibble-dabbled, you lost a little weight, you're starting to feel better, you're getting some of the benefits. What Anna and I are talking about here today is how do you fine-tune it a little more? How do you dial things in, kind of see where you stand a little more? And for me too, Anna, it goes well beyond just the nutrition. I have been eating this way for a little while. I recently, at the beginning of this year, started doing kind of a more keto carnivore type of thing. So I've just learned that because of the insulin resistance I still deal with, it's probably better that I even do a total carbohydrate elimination. So you continue to learn more and more about yourself, testing blood sugar and insulin and all of these different things that you can get tested is all a part of the process. And beyond the nutrition, doing things that are kind of biohacks. So I recently and have been talking about lately red light therapy and infrared sauna therapy and getting into an ice bath, a water full of ice and having ice baths. All of those things are complementary to what you're doing in your nutrition. And I think when we realize this isn't about weight loss anymore and it's about total health, adding in all of these other things as an addition to what you're doing with your keto just becomes natural.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we had my ketogenic family had just mentioned that it's taken her 3 years to figure out what works for her body,
Yes.
and also realize that it doesn't always work for everyone in her family.
Right.
And she's one of the members of our group, and it's so awesome. She has her whole entire family on the keto diet. And so I know as a mom, not only having to hack your own body, but kind of trying things out to see what works for the family as well has to be a challenge.
So there is this word called bioindividuality, and people, and this is what's gotten us into trouble with nutritional advice here in America. We get these dietary guidelines for Americans that come out every 5 years. And in the dietary guidelines, there is one recommended diet for everyone. And the dietary guidelines have never recognized bioindividuality, that we all have our own modes of eating that's going to make us healthy, and what works for Jimmy Moore isn't going to work for Anna, isn't going to work for Lindy, isn't going to work for whoever is doing it, because you've got to find what works for you. And people don't like that. They like being told, tell me how many grams of carbs to eat, tell me how many grams of fat to eat. and they don't want to do the work and the biohacking, the testing of the blood sugar to see where they stand.
Exactly. I'm so glad you brought up the topic of bioindividuality, because that is one of the things that I'm hoping that our group test will lead us to talk about, because inevitably we are going to have folks that have different readings and react differently to the different foods. So I'm hoping that'll generate some really cool discussions and learning for all of us, and also some tolerance of how we look at food, and also get away from just those simple phrases of not keto. We need to look deeper than that.
Yeah. So there were some good questions that came in. I'm going to scroll back here a little bit. San Ketonio Prego is one of your peoples as well. Does insulin resistance increase with age, or is it solely based on metabolic health? It's both. Insulin resistance, you naturally become more insulin resistant the older that you get, and anybody that's turned 40 knows what I'm talking about. So 40 hit me hard because I had already been successful for about 8 years after doing low carb, and I was getting benefit, and it's like 40 hit, and okay, Jimmy, we're going to remind you of your insulin resistant past, and we're going to come back with a vengeance. And it was hard. Because I was doing all the right things, and yet weight was coming back. And so that's where I had to stop, reassess, and adjust. And people are like, well, you eat keto, you should be stick thin. And I'm going, it doesn't work that way, because the metabolic damage is still there. The fat cells that were there when I was 410 are still there. And it's going to fight you tooth and nail to get back to homeostasis again, which for it was 400 plus pounds. So anybody that's lost weight, you know the struggle. The struggle is real. And the insulin resistance will continue to be there and get a little worse as you get older. So don't mean to discourage you there, saying Ketonio Prego, but yes, as you get older, and you're pregnant now, so when you have your munchkin, it's going to make things a little bit harder the next go round for you.
Good question. There's Jordan had a question too. She asked if we're going to focus on physical reactions too, whether my blood sugar goes too high up, I get lightheaded and feel tingly all over. I definitely think that's something that we ought to talk about too, is how do you feel when you eat something and your reaction to it?
Yes, subjective feeling is always going to be the first thing you'll notice. So if you get lightheaded, or you have, symptoms, like I was mentioning earlier with the hypoglycemia, fatigued, hungry right after eating, listen to those signals. I would even keep a symptom journal, you guys, even as you kind of go through your keto lifestyle. And this is definitely for newbies. If you're brand new to keto and you're like wanting to kind of judge things, people like to write down how much they weigh and tracking that. Okay, great. I'm not a fan of that, but if you want to do that, great. I think more valuable information is, okay, I ate at 8 a.m. My blood sugar was 85. I had XYZ food. At 9 a.m., I felt suddenly tired, like I needed to go back to bed again. I felt flush. I couldn't understand what was going on, and write all that down. Because what you're going to see is clues as to what food is doing in you, and including those so-called healthy foods. So some people are sensitive to things called nightshades. So things like tomatoes and peppers. And you may not know you're sensitive to that unless you keep a symptom journal. You may not know that maybe you're getting a reaction to eggs, for example. I know you recently talked about having the sensitivity test, and you were shocked to see the eggs was on there. I had the same thing happen to me. And so knowledge is power, and use that knowledge and take these subjective signs for what they are. They're yet another clue as to how food is responding in you.
Very good point. Here's another good question. Linda Living Keto just asked, so is fatigue coming from low blood sugar possibly?
Fatigue could come definitely from low blood sugar. That's one of the telltale signs that you're getting low blood sugar, is to have the symptom of fatigue. But fatigue in and of itself is not an indicative of just low blood sugar. Fatigue could be from a lot of things. You could have adrenal burnout and have fatigue happen from that. I know Christine, my wife Christine, has Hashimoto's disease, and if her medication, if she forgets her dose or something, the first thing she noticed, boom, it just hits her like a ton of bricks, fatigue. And so don't negate that there are other factors that might be causing fatigue, and that just because you have fatigue doesn't mean you have low blood sugar. But yes, low blood sugar in and of itself will cause that.
Great. Well, Jimmy, I so appreciate you sharing with us today.
We're not done. We got plenty of time. Keep going.
Well, I don't want, okay. I don't want to.
I already rescheduled I had an 11 a.m. podcast with someone. I already told them 11:30, so you got plenty of time.
All right.
Unless you're done. If you're done, mic drop, we out of here. I know we could do a Jimmy rants with Anna at the end. So what do you want to rant about?
Oh gosh. One of my rants, I think, is discovering sugar in my
Cadbury eggs.
Well, yeah. I mean, I would rather eat my sugar in Cadbury eggs than in medication. There was another medication that supposedly to help with possible leaky gut. And again, you know, I get this in, I get the prescription isn't paid for and by insurance. And I read on there that it sounds like basically it's a collagen, like a really concentrated collagen, but it has sugar in it and is wildly expensive. I think without insurance, it was going to be like $2,500 a month. But then they apply something to it, some sort of discount, and then it brings the price down. But it is so angering to me that in our prescriptions and in the medical world, that sugar is being added to medications. I mean,
there's all kind of things that they put in the food supply that in Europe is illegal. They banned like so many little ingredients that here in America, we obviously don't give a crap. Not we do, but collectively the corporations that are putting all of these little chemicals and ingredients and additives and sweeteners and all kind of little colorings in all of the foods. And now you're saying the prescription drugs, it's not surprising. And I think this is where those of us that are vigilant about our health have to speak up. And if we don't speak up and demand better, I think what we do is we go say, hey, look, why is the rest of the world getting rid of all of these things that we're putting into the food supply and in the pharmaceutical supply so readily? Why is the rest of the world getting a clue? And we're supposedly one of the leading nations in the entire world, and we can't get our act together in this realm. It's pretty maddening.
It is. I mean, especially, I mean, folks like me who and you that get the toxins out of even our cleaners that we use in our home.
Yep.
And then to turn around and have things that are supposed to help us actually have things, simple things like sugar added to them, just infuriates me.
So my ketogenic family had an interesting scenario here. I recently had a blood sugar of 78 and a ketone level of 3.7 after doing a 36-hour fast. I felt horrible, could not figure out why I was feeling that way. It was my second fast. So I don't know how long my ketogenic family's been keto. Obviously, they're part of your group. Do you know?
About 3 years,
3 years,
is one of the things. I'm pretty sure that's right. About 3 years.
Okay. So there's a lot of things that can make you feel bad after doing a fast. I'm wondering if during the fast there wasn't enough salt consumed, because salt is one of those key electrolytes that is in the body that if you're doing one of those longer fast, which 38 hours freaks a lot of people out, but it's kind of relatively a shorter fast. But you do need to salt in the midst of that. And maybe whatever salt you did have in the midst of it wasn't enough. And I'm wondering that the ketones and the blood sugar are indicative that they were getting some of the benefits physiologically in their blood. But the reason physiologically on the outside they weren't feeling well is the electrolytes were out of balance. So next time you try that on your third fast, my ketogenic family, make sure you get enough salt. And I mean, stick it under your tongue. This is a trick that I try to tell people. Speaking of sublingual, you want to get some pink Himalayan sea salt, Redmond's real salt, and you want to just put it underneath the tongue, let it kind of ooze there a little bit, and that will replenish those electrolytes. And you need to do that pretty often in the midst of doing a 36-hour fast. So maybe you're drinking water. As you drink your water, think about, as you get through one serving of your water, that you're resalting as well, and that'll probably prevent that the next time around.
Awesome. You know, I know you're doing the carnivore diet more so now. Did you find you had to adjust your electrolytes after going carnivore? Did you have to increase salt or magnesium any?
Yeah, so clarification, I'm doing keto carnivore, which is a more optimal form of carnivore for me. Traditional carnivore is about 65 to 70% fat. The keto carnivore, which I'm also including animal foods like cheese and things like that, is more like 75 to 80% for me. And that's my sweet spot, Anna, is figuring out that I did an experiment last year where I went to 90% fat, and that wasn't optimal. Then I had 55 to 60% fat with very high protein, and that wasn't optimal. It wasn't until I got that little sweet spot of 75 to 80% that I felt the best. But yeah, I think a carnivorous way of eating is fabulous. And to your question, no, to be honest, I suppose I'm just so used to salting everything and getting that into my body. This is a major mistake a lot of keto dieters make, is they neglect their electrolytes. It's one reason I try to preach it early and often. Get your salt, get your magnesium, get your potassium, and get your water. Zinc's in there as well. Get all of these things if you want to feel you're optimal when you go keto.
Very good advice. Well, that's all I got.
Okay. No worries. No worries. Well, thanks so much. I'm sorry it didn't work out over on Facebook, but we made this work here. And yeah,
so
when you were like, you know, it's not working, I'm like, well, I know Instagram Live works because I do 2 Jimmy rants every single day here.
Yes, thank you. And I have no idea what it was with Facebook, but it was not cooperating with me. And I appreciate you for being so gracious and helping out and making this happen. So thanks again.
My pleasure.
And we can't wait for you to come visit us in the near future here in San Antonio.
Deep in the heart of Texas.
Yay. Thanks a lot, Jimmy. Take care.
We Southerners, we got to stick together, don't we?
That's right. You're my keto brother from another mother.
Bye, guys.